Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday afternoon here, about 3:08 p.m. California time here, August 8th, 2024. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.7 out here across the Atlantic and also a 2.5 on the globe here. Obviously, we did see some larger scale activity over here across the Japan area where the Japanese agencies over there have issued a dire megaquake warning out here to their public. And the area of concern sits just right around this area where we've seen that 7.1 earthquake early this morning. Now, there's been a handful of aftershocks, including at least one 5.4 there in the Japan area, and of course quite a few other quakes as well. They fear that this earthquake activity today is a sign that things may be ramping up here across this area called the Nankai subduction zone, the Kumo Ridge area. This region is very capable of producing a megaquake. Check out this article here that they put out in Japan from Tokyo. This is the English version here. Japan sees a higher risk than usual risk of megaquake off the Pacific coast. So the Japanese Weather Agency said Thursday that the risk of a massive earthquake occurring around the Nankai Trough that runs along the Pacific coast may have become higher than usual, issuing the first such advisory of its kind. Goodness, right? So in the worst case scenario, a powerful tremor could shake a wide area of Japan and create, obviously, a subsequent tsunami. Here's the warning. The Japanese government has predicted there is a 70 to 80% chance of a magnitude 8 to 9 quake occurring along the Nankai Trough within the next 30 years. So that's a fairly high percentage, and that could create a big deal. 800 kilometers here of subduction zone in this area. Now, I want to show you a little bit about history in this area. This is the trough zone, the major concern area in the Japan region. That specific area sits right in this region right here, and that does include the activity that we've seen today, just barely on the western edge over here. And it looks as though the occurrence level here, it's kind of an odd subduction zone area. This region is definitely not like the Cascadia subduction zone over here across the Pacific Northwest. It doesn't add up a whole bunch of strain here as quick as this area does, which is right off here, right? This is going to be the area of concern, this area of Japan. You got the Filipino plate here in the kind of a salmon color, light red, dark, medium red. Take your choice here. And this area is the subduction zone. There's a couple different subduction zones here. The Philippine Trench and all over the place. I tend to call this area the crunch zone because this is where all the plates are colliding and subducting. If you look at the Pacific plate here, that's going to be this yellowish color. Arrows pointing to the northwest. Filipino plate here moving off to the west into this area. The Eurasia plate backing up all that strain. So all these plates colliding and subducting. It doesn't take hundreds and hundreds of years to build up strain for a big megaquake out here. And this area has been known to have earthquakes on average between 90 to 200 years along this subduction zone. And it seems as though they come in pairs. They often occur in pairs where a rupture along one part of the fault is followed by a rupture elsewhere on the fault soon following that the original quake, like the 1854 earthquake, and then I think the next day or so they seen another larger quake on that same segment. The 1944 earthquake along that subduction zone was followed by a 1946 earthquake. So they definitely appear to be coming in pairs, although one earthquake ruptured along the entire fault. That was the 1707 earthquake there in that subduction zone. Of course, that can produce a big quake. Of course, back then, 1707, that's roughly around the time when the Cascadia subduction zone hit. Just a a few years following that Cascadia earthquake, which happened back in 1700. So this earthquake there in Japan in this area of interest produced, on estimates, an 8.6 or an 8.7. It possibly also triggered the last eruption of Mount Fiji 49 days later. So, there's obviously some concern here. Let's see here. So time span, right? Time span would be, let's see what we got. There's a couple segments there, 1944, 1946. We're not quite at the 100-year mark for this area, right? But it looks like between 90 to 200 years. So the obvious concern here is that things are building up across this Nankai megathrust area, the subduction zone that sits where this earthquake activity occurred today. That 7.1 down there about 15 miles into this area, a little bit deeper aftershock activity. So, an area to watch for sure, right? We got so many subduction zones out here that are well overdue. And we did see a little bit of activity following all this movement further up north here into the Japan Trench. 5.2 coming in, 115 miles deep here at the northern end of the Japan Trench. So regional stress and strain is building out there as a whole, right, along that area. The Kuro-Kamachaka, that's another major subduction zone area that's, I know this area can produce some big quakes, and everyone seems to just be ignoring it for some reason. It hasn't produced any mega quakes out here in quite a long time, and there's no doubt it's building up steam. It's quiet for now, but that's another major subduction zone area. And the thing I noticed here, similar to what we've seen back in 2011 following that 9-pointer off the coast here of Japan, East Coast, is that California got a little relief here in earthquake activity. The strain tend to back off a little bit here across the eastern portion of the plate, Pacific plate, when there's major adjustment out here. And now, while this is not specifically on the Pacific plate, it is in adjustment, right? You got the Filipino plate right here. When this moves further to the west here, northwest, that adjustment takes place and does relieve, does take the strain that's building up out here as well with it, and relieves the pressure out here across the west coast, where look at this earthquake activity around California. It's really died off following that larger scale movement out there in the Japan area today. Last earthquake was a 2.1 at 1:30, so a couple hours ago. Coincidence? I think not. So we'll have to watch it. Not saying this activity across Southern California is over completely, but we have noticed a dying down of the earthquake sequences out here. Let's get a total tally, though, first, see what we got in terms of the multitude of quakes. We got 424 earthquakes. I think this Southern California area is getting ready to go. But when things break out here, that temporarily relieves strain out here across the eastern portion of the plate. So a lot of activity. 400 and what was the number again? 400. Let's zoom in directly to this area. 424. And of course, all that activity from a 5.2 earthquake. A couple fours in there as far as aftershock activity. The largest one was a 4.6. Bunch of threes in there, a bunch of twos, hundreds of ones, and I'm sure a couple other smaller quakes in there as well. I'm sure there's way more than 2.9s, right? That seems a little rare to have just only two little microquakes. You got to remember that for a certain amount of 2 magnitudes or 3, there's going to be a number of even smaller quakes. So I'm sure you could probably add another 100 or so quakes under the 1.0 threshold, but for some reason here, they're not counting those. I guarantee you, though, there's more than just 2 of them. So that's a lot of activity. It has halted almost entirely following this adjustment out here. across the way across the Pacific. Yes, but all these plates move in accordance with the general plate theory out here, right? You adjust one piece of the puzzle, and ultimately that can either increase strain out here in certain areas or relieve strain. And I think in this case, it's temporarily relieving strain out here across the west coast area for now. Let's see what else we got here for California. I mean, there's always earthquake activity, a bunch of smaller quakes out here down in Southern California. Nothing of abnormal activity out here. For now, a little small earthquake near the Ridgecrest area, Bay Area of Northern California. A couple earthquakes from yesterday. But really, it's a lot calmer following that movement. Mount Hood area, seen a handful of smaller quakes up here. Very small microquake activity. Same for Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier. Nothing of any major change goes. The Cascadia subduction zone, our megaquake here one day. Last popped back in 1700 with a 9.1, I believe is what it was. So, we're building up enough steam out here for a megaquake here one day across the Pacific Northwest. I don't want it. I don't think anybody wants it, but it's coming. Let me check out the tremor here. I'll include this link here from the Japan's National Daily article that was put out following this earthquake today, if you guys want to read it. There's a lot of information in there. So let's go check out the tremor map here tonight, or today. Not quite nightly. This is from yesterday along the Cascadia subduction zone. 131 epicenters. Now, it'd be interesting to see if things died off or picked up today following the earthquake activity there off the coast of Japan last night or early this morning. So this is, again, from yesterday. 131 epicenters. We'll check back in a little bit later tonight and see if things have increased or decreased. They should have decreased out here accordingly. The rest of the country out here fairly quiet, nothing major going on. One little lonesome earthquake out here across New Jersey, a 1.7. Hawaii, see if anything's changing out here. You think with all this movement around the Pacific, things would be popping out here, but they're really not. Still got a little bit of swarming going on up here across the summit area of Kilauea Volcano. Let's go double check the hazards map here and see what we have going on. Where the volcano is currently at a yellow and advisory. Hold on a second here. Let's get rid of all these cameras. It looks like they added a few different things here. Something's updated on this map in a big fashion, because it never used to be this cluttered. Infrasound. Okay, so there we go. I tried to take away all the cameras here. They updated something out here, that's for sure. I don't know if they added more seismograph stations out here or what, but it looks a little different. There's some of the seismos across the area. Not a big deal in terms of earthquake activity right now. Just a handful of smaller quakes out in the area of Kilauea Volcano. I'm not going to do that 100 times. If it doesn't want to work the first time, I'm not going to click on it again. And the camera view out here, far as what is going on with this? See, you guys see that? Something's going on. It's really weird as to why it does that on occasion. Yeah, I don't know. But let me check out the tilt meters out here. This looks a little bit more realistic. This, maybe something hadn't loaded out here yet. I don't know, but here's the tilt meter. Notice the past month or so. Why is it doing that? That is so weird. It's really strange. I can just barely click on it and it will not even pop up. So that's a bummer. Let me check out the deformation data out here. That shouldn't do this, whatever's going on with that. Here's the overall trend out here in the last 2 days. Still showing some inflation. Past week as well. Nothing major has changed out here according to the graphs. And I haven't seen any major uptick in terms of earthquake activity out here. Just kind of a waiting game. Earthquake activity limited, obviously, up to the summit area for now, close to the summit, as the pressurization out here continues. All right, let's go check Iceland. I don't know why it's doing that, folks. Weird. Sometimes it'll work perfect for months, and then I'll start having issues like last night. I had things shutting down on my computer for some reason. Very odd. Earthquake activity here across the Svartsengi area. Limited here. A couple earthquakes around the craters area. But in general, things look quiet there for now. Similar to Hawaii, although in different terms of volcanic activity, this area is quite pressurized in terms of the volume of magma underneath this area. Got these run times here. I'll show you guys here real quick. Here is the Grindavik area. Notice that we're continuing to go up and up and up in terms of inflation. This is the vertical displacement across the Grindavik area, and we're way above the previous level seen prior to the eruption back in the end of May. So things are going to start happening here pretty soon across the area. I don't see how much longer it can withstand the volume of magma out here. Nothing new. This update was put out a couple days ago there from the Icelandic Met Office, and it basically just stated that there's enough pressure down below to get things going. All right, we did have an X flare here just a short time ago. Pretty decent X flare from AR 3777. 777s, all right. An X 1.3 to be exact. There it is on the X-ray flux chart. Pretty decent flare. Notice the thickness here indicating a potential CME associated with that. So that could amplify the conditions here in terms of the auroras over the next, well, it's going to take a couple days to get here. We already had a G2 class storm here in the forecast, but it could enhance some of these nights ahead in terms of the auroras. So here's tonight, the forecast out there. Not a big deal. KP index around 4. Tomorrow night is the night you may want to get out in order to see the auroras down here across the northern tier states with a KP index of 6 at least. And of course that is pending everything that is forecasted goes through. 3777 is going to be the sunspot right here, center disk roughly. The most recent image, a little bit further off to the center, off from the center. I guess there's a little area in there of some complexity. Doesn't look like much, but it produced a low-grade X flare. So we'll continue to keep an eye on some of these sunspots for some further flaring. Also got another active region up here coming around the northeastern limb that looks a little complex as well. Overall threat for flaring, 25% chance for X flare, M flare at 75% chance, C flare around 99% chance or so. And again, the aurora forecast looks promising, but we'll see what happens though in real life, right? There is the X flare, X 1.3, a neat little image of it from that sunspot earlier. Pretty decent velocity here, well over 1,000 km per second from that. So there was a coronal mass ejection associated with it, and it should be headed to Earth here in a couple days. All right, hurricane development out there. Got some tropical systems out in the eastern Pacific. The Atlantic Ocean starting to gear up a little bit, potentially out here. Got a 40% chance of maybe some tropical development through the next 7 days from this area in the X. Of course, Debbie over here still creating a little bit of issues with some rain and flooding concerns. But let's see what we got here for the models. I want to check out, see if we got any cool spells coming for California. It looks like the Great Lakes states getting in on some much cooler weather out here with that blue. That's below normal temperatures for those folks. Out here across the west coast, it looks like we got a little trough of our own dipping down as we head towards, looks like early next week. I'll take it. And after that, maybe some normal conditions. I don't see any massive dominant high pressures out here, which would indicate a major heat spell for the West Coast. So that is good news because we've had enough. I tell you, we've had enough. I don't recall any summer that I've lived out here that it's been as hot and for as long as of a duration that we've experienced this summer. So I'm ready for some cooler weather. All right, folks, seismograph stations here look quiet. Again, I will leave this article, which where'd it go? Right here. I'll leave this article for you guys to read if you want to check it out. It states a little bit more on what I covered in terms of why they're issuing a possible major earthquake advisory. And it's worth a read, so check it out if you get a chance. I'll leave the link to this article in the description video of this update video below. So we'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening, unless something major happens, folks. Again, seismograph stations out here look pretty quiet for now. Stay safe out there.